You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم هناك لشوارزنيجر.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee here, solo for now. We'll see if that changes later during the show. Today, we will have the Canadian Premier League bits and bytes, a little bit of a summary of what we have learned this week during the show and outside of the show, and some speculation and maybe some look at the possibilities of some ownership group, maybe some negotiations and things are happening as we speak. So we'll start with this, but later on, after the break, we'll be reviewing our games of the week, previewing, I should say. We will look at the games important in Major League Soccer this weekend and in the Premier League. It wraps up the season on Sunday at 10 a.m. all at once. And yes, we know who's going down. We know who wins. Chelsea, 2016-17 Premier League champions, campione. But now, who's going to play in the Champions League? Who's not going to play in the Champions League? That is still a bit to be decided. And we will be talking about this on the second break. But first, the Canadian Premier League. What have we learned this week? And that is an interesting week in the Premier League history. We got some details, and you can actually read an article by Duane Rollins of Soccer Today in Canadian Soccer News on CanadianSoccerNews.com. And what we've learned this week, basically, and it's going to be a Canadian Premier League bits and bytes will be on CanadianSoccerNews.com, and whenever Duane and I have news, it will be the place where we will put those information when they come in, so you can stay up to date with the ongoings of the future needed Canadian Premier League. First, a team in French Canada was basically promised, and if you haven't listened to Tuesday's show with Paul Byrne, I suggest you do. Here's from the article. This shouldn't need to be explained, but in case you're new or still holding a reform, there's a lot of Canadian politic analogies, so you're gonna like it. This shouldn't need to be explained, but in case you're new or still holding a Reform Party membership card from 1993, but you simply cannot have a national league in Canada in the year 2017 that ignores one of the major regions of the country. I'll avoid the politics of this for the most part. But if you don't launch with a team in French Canada and preferably in Quebec proper, you are alienating a significant part of the country, and you'll be fighting uphill to gain the respect of that part of the country for many years to come, even if you do eventually get a team in there. So this is Duane's article. So I've been long beating the drum on this. The CPL needs to be like the PLC, where it's more inclusive and includes Quebec. So Quebec looked like a long shot until Paul answered my question Duane asked him this week. Yes, there will be a team in Quebec. Multiple, maybe. That got me to dig around yesterday. What I learned isn't particularly illuminating, but it was suggested to me that there are two groups that have made what was described to me as preliminary inquiries. One group was expected out of Quebec City. No one could say for sure who might be behind such a bid, but a good guess might be the money people behind the Laval Rouge et Or. Although not really soccer guys, they have deep roots in Canadian gridiron football. If you're not familiar with the Rouge et Or story, have a read. The thinking here is that they might be motivated to invest in soccer because of the possibility that it would, one, put them in good standing with CFL owners, thus making the possibility of bringing a CFL team to Quebec City more of a possibility. And two, it would help get Pabst Stadium further expanded, also with CFL in mind. Who knows? That could be a possibility. Soccer fans may not want to celebrate such gridiron ambitions, but sometimes ambition makes for strange bedfellows. Laval is deep pocketed, and we're talking about Université Laval and the Tanguay. Tanguay is the owner. Tanguay Furniture Store, and there's a Pionnier Rimouski. There's Les Remparts de Québec. It's more than just football ownership. It's very high millionaires here. Laval is deep pocketed, and the success of the Rouge is truly remarkable. Soccer could do worse so long as he was interested in seeing soccer succeed. The second group was said to be the local ownership of the former Trois-Rivières Attack. The Attack were a reserve team of the Montreal Impact for several years. The Impact would not be involved. So the speculation was Duane was able to gather as information. We're still waiting on more information on that side, and there might be even more to this story than we are seeing right now. A lot of people talking. And according to Capitaine Soccer and his sources, you can follow Capitaine Soccer on Twitter at Capitaine Soccer. There's meetings going to happen in the city of Quebec. So one and one together, this seems like a very high possibility. And don't disregard the Houston. See, when I feel like saying Dynamo and the word Houston comes out, the Dynamo de Quebec starting in the PLSQ. Yeah, it wasn't as easy as they wanted to the first game, but they have a semi-pro soccer team now in Quebec City. Could that be involved in any ways in what a Canadian Premier League team could look like in Quebec City? That is maybe a possibility there too. So a lot of signs are pointing towards a Quebec City Canadian Premier League soccer team. Maybe Three Rivers, maybe Trois-Rivières. Who knows? Three Rivers, Trois-Rivières, okay? It's Trois-Rivières. Smaller cities than expected. That's what we have learned this week. When most of us think about the possibility of a CPL, we tend to only consider large markets that we think of major league. But in Canadian context and in soccer context, I would add to Duane's article, basically markets that have NHL and CFL teams. But Paul suggested that markets as small as 200,000 could be targeted as potential sites for teams. Further to that, also suggested that creating local derbies was something that he wants to see happen. That's significant in that it puts many cities on the list that we might currently look as being suburban or part of another larger center. For the sake of playing fantasy franchise, let's look at the current markets that are over the magic 200,000 figure right now. Using Canadian census data, there are currently 20 centers that are considered census metropolitan area, which is fancy way to say markets, which more than 200,000 people living in them. They are, and this is below. Toronto, including Mississauga and Brampton, 5.9 million. Montreal with Laval, almost 4 billion. Vancouver with Surrey, 2.4 billion. Calgary, Ottawa, Calgary 1.4, Ottawa 1.3 almost, Quebec City 8, Winnipeg 778, and so on and so on. But when we go back at the bottom of the list, the over 200,000, though those are the cities that we might not have expected. St. John's with Conception Bay South, Mount Pearl, and Paradise over the 200,000, 205. Sherbrooke 212, including Magog. Regina, 236. Saskatoon, 295. Windsor with Lakeshore, 329. Victoria with Sarnage, 367. Oshawa with Whitby and Clarington, 379, 380. Halifax, 403. Niagara Falls and Welland included, and St. Catharines. So St. Catharines, Niagara, with Niagara Falls, Welland, Niagara-on-the-Lake, all that peninsula, 406. London, 494. Kitchener, Waterloo with Cambridge, 523. Hamilton, 70. See, there's a lot. We have plenty of teams right there. And if you look at other Premier Leagues, just go to England, really think like Brighton will be in the Premier League next year. You know what size is Brighton? Off the top of my head, I don't. But it'd be closer to the bottom of that list than to the top. Maybe in the middle somewhere. Why not us? Why not now? Why not here? Why not? And if you're in Halifax, if you're in Kitchener, Waterloo, and you finally have a professional team at the top level of its sport in this country at the moment, Yeah, there's MLS, but still, you know, you can get behind it. It could be magical. It could be 30, 40, 50, 200 years, like Paul mentioned down the road. Could be interesting. Continuing on Duane's article. There are an additional 21 markets that are between 100 and 200, most of which are trending up in population as Canada gets increasingly more urban. So, the possibilities of cities in the Premier League, Canadian Premier League, could be a little smaller than expected. It's a good thing. And there could be a little more down the road. And now, with the amount of inquiries made by over 10, I think the last count was, we need to take a look at Paul's, the CPL Soccer Twitter at CPL Soccer. And as well, if you go back to the interview, Paul mentioned that a lot of inquiries since the announcement of the league. But what we have learned as well this week is we kind of, sort of know the league business structure. Not that it was shocking, but Paul confirmed that there will be a form of salary control in place. As stated, there will be a cap or budget or whatever you want to call it. Shouldn't surprise anyone. That's the North American way. It's also the only way that most of the potential owners would have agreed to become a part of the launch. It shouldn't necessarily be seen as a bad thing that no one is looking to lose money forever in this league. Reading between the lines of what Paul said and being careful not to put words in his mouth, the following is me reporting from other sources, Duane. It's increasingly clear that the CPL will launch in a way that very closely looks like MLS in the early years. The naive purist reading this might not like this, but the reality is that some form of, let's call it collective ownership is vital to getting through the early years. What I've previously reported, again, this is Duane's article on CanadianSoccerNews.com. What I've previously reported and have confirmed of late is that a major component of the Canadian Premier League business model will be equal shares. I'm told it will cost about $1.5 million for initial investors in a marketing arm that will be similar in scope and purpose as some is to MLS. There's a good possibility that Don Garber's recent comments about opening a Canadian office of MLS is directly related to this part of the plan. Will Canadian Premier League look exactly like MLS single entity? I doubt it. It will have the advantage of having 20 years of history to learn from. Canadian Premier League owners will know what did and didn't work in Major League Soccer 1.0 and will probably be a bit less centrally controlled than MLS was back in the early days. Just not as fully independent as some might like. Lastly, Paul suggested that we will know much more about the league in the next 90 days or so. This might be the most exciting thing of all, is that we'll know more very soon. So you can listen to Duane, you can read Duane's article and listen to the Paul Byrne interview of earlier this week. The article is located at CanadianSoccerNews.com, and the show can be found on the iTunes, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Podbay Player, anywhere you get your podcast feed of the Sports Podcasting Network or Soccer Today, and as always, available on demand at sportspodcastingnetwork.com. You're a fan of the show. You like what we do. You like Duane's investigative research to get more details about the Canadian Premier League. Become a patron. Help us. Give us that famous pat in the back, on the back. If you want to give it in, it's fine too. We'll take it any way it comes. Patreon.com/sports podcasting network. That's patreon.com/sports podcasting network. With your help, we can get even more info on the Canadian Premier League. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will have our games of the week.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Can they make it 7 in a row? Can Toronto get another win tonight on the road? No Javinko for maybe 3 weeks. No Hagelin for maybe 8 to 10 weeks. Canadian Championship coming up next year. Next year. Well, yeah, it will coming up next year, but it's coming next week too. By the way, the Amway Canadian Championships coverage this year can be found exclusively on TSN. game will be shown on TSN. Fun to see Major League Soccer game back on RDS as well, because the Impact are not playing on RDS at all this season outside of those Canadian Championship games. So if you are missing some Claudine Deville and some Jean Goudin in your life, maybe stay tuned to RDS on Tuesday and the following Tuesday. For TSN, it's just a continuation of their commitment to soccer, continuation to their commitment to soccer in Canada, with the especially now coast to coast on CTV, some games, and a ramp up coverage of Major League Soccer on TSN. And we're seeing the efforts, and we're seeing, it's the ratings are, we're probably going to get into the ratings more accurately next week. We'll maybe have Jonathan back on the show to talk about TV ratings and TV landscape and where is it all going with ESPN and Fox and everything like this. And we're working on an interview. If you follow Duane's Twitter, you'll see he's freaking out too, because we're trying to broaden our coverage of the beautiful game. So for Toronto tonight against the Red Bulls at Red Bull Arena, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Friday night match. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's Friday night match, and it's the Red Bulls versus Toronto. Toronto, top of the East. And we have a question here. It could be possible. I don't necessarily see the question from Pat live on the air right now, live radio. Kevin, is it possible to have two teams from La Belle Province? Yeah, it could be possible. Quebec City and a suburb of Montreal. Can you please confirm this information? It could be possible, Pat. Just go back to maybe 20 minutes ago on the show, and I address the situation, or go to CanadianSoccerNews.com, and you will get your info. CanadianSoccerNews.com, Sports Podcasting Network.com. Trois-Rivières, Quebec City are maybe potential. Toronto, will they make it 7 tonight? No Javinko against the Red Bulls. The Red Bulls are Jesse March has addressed the supporters, asking them to be with them, to support them. They'll need them, and apologizing for the terrible spectacle last week was. Moving on to Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, Stade Saputo's Clarence Zamali's second game with the Montreal Impact. Patrice Bernier will probably start, and Donadel is probably back. So the big deficiency of the Montreal Impact to be able to contain Justin Merrim in the midfield and not having him face the back line and way too much space. Well, that might not be a problem this week. First of all, it's Portland. And not too bad. Portland are actually having a decent season, as always. The combinations of Valeri and Nagbe have always been dangerous. And Nagbe is playing on a slowly but surely on a very, very high level. Montreal will have some players back. Now, the conundrum is, do you put Anthony Jackson-Hamel? Do you make him start? If you make him start, you don't have that option off the bench that you have been using over the last few weeks. 4 goals in 40 minutes of play. Amazing influence on games from Jackson-Hamel off the bench. And when you make him start, you don't have that same option. Would Audreau continue to start on the right and maybe move up front later on in the game if offensive threats are needed? Balou, what do you put Balou? I think the way to go forward now with this, Donadel is there. He's back. He practiced for about half the week. Donadel's back. Patrice Bernier, probably. So you have those two. And Zamali. So you have your 3 there. You're up 3. Piatti, yeah. You put Aduro there. His speed is kind of needed. And Balou, or do you put Aduro up top? So those are the questioning, and we'll see what type of roster information Mauro Biello decides to go with. A very fair chance the 4-3-3 comes back. We'll see how they manage up top. Piatti, Balou, Aduro, whichever incarnation of that could be what you're looking at top of the Montreal Impact's formation on Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, once again on TVA Sport, MLS Live, and Roots Sports Northwest. By the way, TVA Spa, Don Gerber was in the offices of TVA Spa with their official partner, and Pierre Carbelado of Quebec was there, and all the big Richard Lejean was there as well. Joey Saputo was there, and they say the interesting things are down the road. They will ramp up the coverage. They're planning great things surrounding the Montreal Impact coverage on TVA Spa. So that's to keep an eye on in the next few months, years, whatever came out of this meeting yesterday. DC United, Chicago. Can DC stop this landslide, and can Chicago continue 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on Unimas MLS Live? By the way, if you watch on Unimas, you know that SAP button. You can use it. You have the English commentary on MLS Live, and on Facebook.com. It's one of the games that will be broadcasted on Facebook tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Eastern. Seattle Sounders, Real Salt Lake. Interesting matchup in the Western Conference. Which of those two teams are the best? Both not having the season they would anticipate. Seattle with a type of kind of championship hangover, and Real Salt Lake ups and down this year. Fired their coach after 3 weeks, well, after 3 games. Mike Pepke now, and some great performances, some not, some injuries, some questioning. So we'll see. They had a result earlier this week. So can Real Salt Lake go to Seattle and do what people have been doing lately in Seattle and get a result? That's interesting for Real Salt Lake. Atlanta, Houston, battle of the hot, battle of summer. Atlanta, Houston. Houston doesn't travel well, but guess what? It's not too far. It's not necessarily like traveling to Montreal. Atlanta won't necessarily be in a position that they face a team that's not used to playing in the weather, not used to playing in the hot. Not they are, and Houston might have one of their best performances on the road, I feel, in Atlanta, just because of, well, it's not going to be that different than what they're used to. So for Atlanta, not going to be an easy game, and maybe the reality has set in for Atlanta. You know, Atlanta's not as good as we thought, and Minnesota's better than we thought, so they're pretty much equal. And that's what we will see, expansion sides. And you have to figure expansions will expansion, and Atlanta might have difficulty with Houston at home at 7 p.m. on Saturday. To finish Saturday's schedule, Philly versus Colorado. Philly, since their 3-3 draw at home, since the remontada, the comeback of the Montreal Impact to tie that game about, almost a month ago, went on 3 in a row, 3 on the trot, 9 points in 3 games, going for 4, and it's against the Rapids, which, the way I like to put it, are rapidly solidifying their position as bottom of the Western Conference. Philly, Colorado, tomorrow night. Vancouver, Kansas City, tomorrow night as well, 7 p.m. Vancouver needed maybe a result to jumpstart things. Have been decent. They have been showing some great offensive capabilities, some as well great chemistry. Montero has been good, and they're not as bad as we thought they were a few weeks ago when fans were pressing that panic button. It was maybe a bit early, and I do feel Vancouver has a chance to beat an SKC at home. And the last game, Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, pretty much the game at the same time. So between 5 and 8. Yeah, and watch like 5 games if you have more than one screen. MLS, 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. FC Dallas versus the Quakes. Can the Quakes continue? The Quakes have been surprisingly this year. Kind of the Goonies attitude have come back. It's an odd year. So if in the history of the Quakes, they have been good on even years and terrible on odd years, or is it the opposite? Anyways, but it's an odd year. So maybe they changed their fortunes and they can be good in an odd year. It's 2017 and the Quakes are better than anticipated. But traveling to Dallas and facing one of the best and deepest team in the league, yeah, maybe not the deepest and the best, but really high up there. San Jose is not going to have it easy against Dallas. On Sunday, 3 games to wrap up the weekend of play in Major League Soccer. New England, the Revolutions, at home against the Crew. The Crew, Justin Merrim, player of the week after his hat-trick performance on the road at Stade Saputo. Can he do the same to the Revs? Very possible. Very probable. 5 p.m. Minnesota at home against the Galaxy. You can listen to this game on ESPN, MLS Live, and ESPN Deportes in Spanish as well. The Loons at home against the Galaxy. The Galaxy will Galaxy. They had a decent performance midweek. Alessandrini has been better than I anticipated. Alessandrini, an amazing acquisition by the Quakes, former player of Olympique de Marseille. L'OM, Alessandrini is quite the acquisition, and building the team around him, and no Gio, no problem. And I think that's where this team might have to go. I think it's not working with Gio. There's something, but Alessandrini, I can get behind. Minnesota Galaxy, 5 p.m. on Sunday, once again on ESPN. And the Fox Sports 1 game on Sunday, 7 p.m. Orlando, surprising Lions, travel to New York City FC, their expansion brethren, the 2015 expansion derby. Orlando, NYCFC in Orlando. Pretty tough to beat at home. Quite the stadium. NYCFC. Yeah. It's not as easy as expected. It's, well, when one of your DP slot is Pirlo and he's not contributing to the way a DP slot has to in a salary cap value league, that's what you get. Tommy Mack, amazing goals, playing great. You got to give them that. David Villa, one of the best DP of all time. Yeah, his longevity might not necessarily make him the longest, the best DP of all time. Robbie Keane might be that because of his longevity and everything surrounding it. But David Villa, week in, week out, showing up, impressive, stunning, with flair, works hard, hashtag work rate. He brings that work rate. He is, even though we didn't agree last year because of the Giovinco and Piatti situation, especially Giovinco, and it should have been at least nominated, David Villa is fully deserved that MVP. And right now, if it wasn't for maybe other players stepping up, but when you look at the MVP conversation right now in the whole league, yeah, NYCFC needs maybe a few better results, but David Villa is so valuable to NYCFC. It's how Villa goes, City goes. Can Villa overplay Kaká, overplay Larin and Rivas on Sunday, 7 p.m.? And you can find that out on FS1, MLS Live in Canada, and on Fox Deportes on Sunday at 7 p.m. Quickly, to finish the show today, Sunday, 10 a.m., Premier League wraps up all the games at once, and the only thing really to play for is who's going to make the Champions League. Tottenham and Chelsea, 1 and 2, are not going anywhere. There's an 8 points gap between Tottenham and Man City. Man City in third spot, 75 points right now. They control their destiny. They get a result, a draw. A draw will make them finish third for sure, no matter what Liverpool does. Depending on goal differential, you're going to tell me there? Yes. So if Man City draws and Liverpool beats Borough, which is very possible, depending on the goal differential, Liverpool could overtake Man City, but a draw from Man City guarantees a top 4 finish. A win for Liverpool, depending on the differential, will make Liverpool finish 4th and guarantee either an outright Champions League spot or a playoff game. Arsenal in 5th right now with 72 points. With a win, if City loses and Liverpool draws or loses, Arsenal with a win will overtake both and finish 3rd. Not a lot of chances for that to happen. And then United is 6th, 6 point back Arsenal. They can't get anything. And yeah, what's going to happen if they draw the differentials equal? Here it is. Those are the tiebreakers. In the English Premier League, the league standing is decided using total points scored over the season, then goal difference, then goals scored, in that order. So, right now, Man City, 75 points, 36 goals differential, plus 36, and their goal scored is 75. Liverpool, differential, plus 33. Goals for, 75. Arsenal, differential 31. Goals for 74, 72 points. So Man City still controls their destiny. Liverpool can still control their destiny, and it would take 2 losses or a loss by City, a draw by Liverpool, and a win by Arsenal for them to change the way that it is right now. Liverpool's playing Borough on Sunday. City's playing Watford. Liverpool's at Anfield. Man City's on the road at Watford. Arsenal's playing Everton at the Emirates. But it won't be easy for Arsenal. So if logic is respected, Man City gets the win, Liverpool gets the win, Arsenal finishes 5th, City 3rd, Liverpool 4th. And that will be probably the final standings of the top 5 after Sunday's game. So Sunday, just a little bit past noon, it will be Chelsea, Tottenham, City, Liverpool, and Arsenal, followed by United, the top 6 of the 2017 Premier League. You can follow me on Twitter at Kev Laramee and follow the show on Twitter as well at Soccer Today SPN. Stay tuned to the Sports Podcasting Network this weekend, and Off the Woodworks edition will be at the Portland game, the Stade Saputo, tomorrow 3 p.m. to gather my perspective on the Montreal Impact and the Portland Timbers. And you can listen to this weekend on the Sports Podcasting Network and on iTunes. Just look for Off the Woodworks. And until Monday, as always, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.